I am making a update to my branded deck branded deck. The only thing I don't like is with this deck is I'm trying the dogmatica version, which unfortunately I had to cut down on a bit of extra deck stuff and some of the Despia stuff monsters I like playing. The main thing I'm upset about is that I wasn't able to fit any of this of Masquerade the Blazing Dragon to the extra deck, which I know a lot of my friends will be happy about because they hate that I just summon 3 on my first turn and hope for the best. Just because its effect does stack, so having 3 of them in play means your opponents pay 2,100 life points per card. Or else I believe it was 700. No, it was 600, so they didn't like having to pay 1,800 per card. But anyway, starting off with the monsters, I play 1 copy of Despian Tragedy. If I don't like the Dogmatica build, then I have 12 cards I can take out. That I can put in some of the Dogmatica stuff I took out, like 2 more copies of Tragedy. What was it? Despian Dramaturge of Despia, and I cannot remember the Ad Libitum of Despia. That's what its name was. But anyway, Tragedy. Tragedy has 2 effects, where you can only use 1 of the 2 effects per turn. The first effect, if Tragedy is sent to the graveyard by card effect or banished, then you can add a you can add a Despia monster from your deck to your hand outside of Tragedy, which in this 60 card build is just Alibur the Jester Despia. And then Tragedy's other effect is while it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to then add a branded spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand. And like I said, you can only use 1 of those 2 effects per turn, and only once that turn. So if you use the effect to search, you cannot also use the effect to recycle from the graveyard. And then next, I play 2 copies of Tri-Brigade Mercarier. Mercarier is just a monster negate from hand while you control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Alabaz. But then if if Tri-Brigade Mercarier is banished, then you can add any monster that mentions Fallen of Alabaz or Fallen of Alabaz except for another copy of Tri-Brigade Mercarier. So I'm just going to reword that because I feel like it'd be easier. When it's banished, you add Fallen of Alabaz or a monster that mentions it except for another copy of itself. And then next, I play 3 copies of Dogmatica Ecclesia the Virtuous. Ecclesia is a free summon if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck. And then Ecclesia cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster summoned from the extra deck. Okay, my bad. Small correction. Ecclesia is a free body while there is a monster summoned from the extra deck on the field, so if you summon it, then you can summon Ecclesia. And then the last effect is, on summon, Ecclesia lets you add a Dogmatica spell or trap from your deck to your hand. As I believe it's an on-summon effect. That might just be a once per turn thing. Okay, no, it's when it's normal or special summoned. And you can only use each effect of Dogmatica Ecclesia the Virtuous once per turn. Next, I play 1 copy of Guiding Quem the Virtuous. Guiding Quem has the effect that on summon, you can send a Fallen of Alabaz from your deck to the graveyard, and if a monster leaves the extra deck, then you can activate Quem's effect to summon a Fallen of Alabaz from the graveyard. And then Guiding Quem is also always treated as a Dogmatica and a Despia monster, which with some of the extra deck monsters that actually does matter. And that's the reason why there's only 1. Though if I take out the Dogmatica stuff, then I'll probably bump Quem to 2. But one thing I'm definitely not changing, is in any deck I use it in, it's always a 3 of, which is 3 copies of Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. Blazing Cartesia is a free body, or is a free summon while Fallen of Alabaz or a monster that I believe it has to be Fallen Valbaz or a monster that mentions it. Nope, just Fallen Valbaz is in your graveyard. And then once per main phase, Cartesia has the quick effect to be able to fusion summon. I believe it does have to be a level 8 or higher fusion monster. Yep. And then during the end phase, if this card's in the graveyard and a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard that turn, then you activate Ecclesia's effect to return her to your hand. And you can only use each effect of Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. Virtuous once per turn. For some reason, my brain said it's not Cartesia the Virtuous. Anyway, next, I play 3 copies of Fallen of Albaz. Fallen of Albaz has the effect that if it's normal or special summoned, except in the damage step, you can discard a card to fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from either side of the field as material, including this card, but you cannot use other monsters you control as fusion material. Which, one thing I actually like about this, and one of the monsters in the extra deck, is like if I don't need my normal summon, but my opponent has an entire board of dragons, then I'll just set Fallen of Albaz. It's usually against Draco Tail for some reason. But I'll just set Fallen of Albaz, and then I'll just contact fuse Albaz and every dragon my opponent has to the graveyard. Because for some reason, Konami decided Alba Lenatus is going to be a contact fusion. And then next, I play 3 copies of Albert Jester of Despia. Albert Jester Despia has the effect that on summon, you can add a branded spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And then, just like Tragedy, Albert does have a second effect, but you can only use one of the 2 effects per turn, only once per turn. Where the second effect is if a fusion monster leaves the field because of an opponent's card, then you can activate Albert's effect, target 1 monster on the field, and then Albert will summon itself to then it'll negate that targeted monster's effects until the end of the turn, and then Albert will summon itself. But if you do that, then you cannot also get the search effect off of Albert. And then next, I play 1 copy of Dogmatica Maximus. Maximus can be special summoned by banishing a fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster from your graveyard. And then Maximus has the effect that you can send 2 monsters from your extra deck to the graveyard to then make with different names, so to make your opponent send 2 monsters from their extra deck to the graveyard. And then you can use each effect of Maximus once per turn. And then one of the other fun things with Maximus is that he's a level 8 light spellcaster, which with one of the cards in the extra deck and one of these spells, don't know why my brain's just refusing to work, it actually matters that you have light spellcasters. Next, I play 2 copies of Albion the Shrouded Dragon. I might bump this up to 3 depending on how the testing with it goes, because I don't normally use it because I would prefer Despia monsters, but it has the effect that its name becomes Fallen of Albaz while it's on the field or in the graveyard. And if this card's in your hand or graveyard, you can send a Fallen of Albaz or a branded spell or trap from your hand or deck to the graveyard to apply the following effects based on where it was sent from. If it was sent to hand, you can special summon this card. Or if it was deck, you can place this card on the bottom of the deck. Then if you place this card from your hand, you can draw 1 card. So usually, you'll want to reveal it in your hand. You reveal it in your hand, send a card from your deck to the graveyard, to then put Albion at the bottom of the deck to then be able to draw a card. And then you can get further effects based on what you already have. So if I remember correctly, the usual combo was you have this send branded fusion, then you can use one of the trap cards in the graveyard to then be able to return branded fusion to your hand. It was something like that. But the main thing I like about it is that its name does become Fallen of Albaz while it's in the graveyard, so worst case scenario, you fuse it off or something, and then you have an Albaz engraved, so you can special summon Cartesia. And then next, I play 2 copies of Dogmatica Fleur-de-Lis the Knighted. Fleur-de-Lis has the effect during the main phase. If another monster special summon the extra deck is on the field, or if a monster special summon the extra deck is on the field, you can activate Fleur-de-Lis's effect, special summoning yourself. And then if you have another Dogmatica monster on the field that is not Fleur-de-Lis the Knighted, then you can also negate the effects of one monster on the field. So I do like that this card is an interruption. And then the last effect of Fleur-de-Lis is that when a Dogmatica monster you control declares an attack, you can activate your effect to then increase the attack of all Dogmatica monsters you control by 500, even if this card leaves the field. And then lastly, for the monsters, I play one copy of the Bestial Lubellion. The Bestial Lubellion is usually sent from deck to grave with branded fusion. But Lubellion has the effect to special summon it from hand or graveyard by tributing a level 6 or higher dragon. And then once per turn, you can use Lubellion's effect to take a branded continuous spell or trap from your deck and place it face up on your field. And then moving on to the one-of spells, I play one copy of Branded in White. I'm not sure how I feel about Branded in White yet, but I figured why not try it at one. Branded in White has the effect you can fusion summon from your extra deck using... You fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field, including a dragon monster. You can also banish monsters from your graveyard as material if you use Fallen of Albaz as the fusion material from your hand. If you want to use Fallen of Albaz as material from your hand, field, or ban it, or by banishing itself from the graveyard. And then during the end phase of this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there to activate the effect of Fallen of Albaz's turn. You can set this card. You can only use each effect of Branded in White once per turn. Like I said, I'm just playing one copy of it. I'm not sure if I like it or not. Worst case scenario, it comes out for something else. And then next, I play one copy of Branded Lost. I really like Branded Lost just because it makes it like your opponent cannot negate the effects of or the activation of your card effects that include fusion summoning. And what's do is your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to a fusion monster being summoned. And then if a monster is fusion summoned, or if you fusion summon a monster, then you get to add a Fallen of Albaz or a monster that mentions it from your deck to your hand. Which, my favorite thing to do with this card is summon a monster that has a fusion monster that has an effect on summon. Make a chain, but have that fusion monster be last, because due to Branded Lost effects, your opponent is just unable to respond to it. So I think usually before when I would use it, I'd have like a chain of 4. The fourth card being the fusion monster. Because usually it'd be like Dramaturge, Tragedy, and Ad Libitum. Usually summoning Guardian Chimera. And then I just go, okay, chain 1, chain 2, chain 3. Or not Ad Libitum, it was something else. We were like chain 1 to search for Despia, chain 2 to summon itself, chain 3 to search for Fallen of Albaz where monster mentions it, chain 4 Guardian Chimera, and because Chimera was last, your opponent just can't do anything about any of those. Then I also play one copy of Despia, Theater of the Branded. This is essentially just a once per turn polymerization. And then if your opponent destroys a non-fusion fairy monster, then you can special summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster from your graveyard. So usually it's if your opponent runs over an Aliber, then you get to bring back something like Mirror Jade the Iceblade Dragon. Usually something like that. Next, I am playing 2 copies of the Fallen and the Virtuous. The Fallen and the Virtuous has the effect that it's Oystria as a branded and Dogmatica card. And you only activate one of the following effects, where you can send a monster from your extra deck that mentions Fallen of Albaz's material to the graveyard, and from the extra deck to the graveyard to then target a face-up card on the field and destroy it. And that its other effect can only be used if you have an Ecclesian monster on your field or in your graveyard, which is just a Monster Reborn effect. And then you can only activate the Fallen and the Virtuous one per turn. I'll still be leaving this card in if I take out the dogmatica stuff, just because even if I don't have it for the Monster Reborn option, just being able to dump an extra deck monster to then beat an eruption, I feel like is worth it. Though I don't think it's a 3 of worth it. Next, I play 2 copies of Branded in Red. Branded in Red lets you target a Fallen of Albaz or a Despia monster in your graveyard, return it to your hand, and then you have the option to banish from hand or field to fusion summon. The fun part of this card is that its effective fusion summon is optional, so you can just add back an Aliber and just not care. Or you can. What I've done with this is add back the Despian Tragedy and then banish Tragedy and something else to search for an Aliber. Then I play 2 copies of Branded Fusion. I want to play 3, but I feel like I have to wait till the next ban list to play 3 Branded Fusion. The Branded Fusion just lets you fusion summon a Monster Dimension Swarm of Albaz's material by using monsters from your hand, field, or deck to fusion summon, but you are locked into fusion monsters for the entirety of the turn. Then next, I play 3 copies of Fusion Deployment. Fusion Deployment just lets you reveal a monster from your extra deck that mentions a monster has specific material, to then special summon one of those monsters from your deck. However, it does lock you into fusion monsters, which is fine, because outside of one monster, every monster in this deck's extra deck is a fusion monster. And you can activate 1 fusion deployment per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Nadir's Servant. Nadir's Servant lets you send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard to be able to add a Dogmatica monster that has attack equal to or less than that sent monster's attack. Which, outside of one monster in the extra deck, everything in the extra deck has at least 2,500 attack. And that one monster is in here just for this card, but it can also be used for super polymerization. And you can only activate 1 into your Servant per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Branded in High Spirits. Branded in High Spirits has the effect that you can reveal a monster from your hand and send a level 8 fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard with the same type that has 2,500 attack or defense. Then you can apply this effect, where you discard the revealed monster. If you do, add a Fallen of Albaz or a monster that mentions it from your deck to your hand. Then during the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard this turn, you can add this card from the graveyard to your hand. You can only use 1 Branded High Spirits effect per turn, and only once that turn. Which really is just meant to be an extender, a starter, whatever you really need it to be. I still don't know how I feel about this card, because when I've played Branded in the past, this card just seemed highly unnecessary. As you get a search, but then it's also can just fall under Droll and Lockbird, since that card's starting to get played again. Next, I play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. I've debated taking this card out of the extra deck just because it's really only good in the mirror match, outside of one monster in the extra deck, but the other option is I can just try to make more room for something like Starving Venom or Draco Stapelia. But Super Polymerization just lets you discard a card, fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters on the field as material. And the fun part of this card is that you can use your opponent's monsters too. And then the final part of its effect is that neither player can activate cards or effects in response to the card's activation. But if I remember correctly, there's like 2 or 3 cards that can actually negate Super Polymerization because they do not activate to a negate. They just do a certain thing when it would resolve. But outside of those 3 cards, like a Mermail card, a Sacred Beast card, and I can never remember the third one. But next, I play 3 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust. This card I do still like this card, as it can be an extender when you get Drolled and Lockbirded. As if your opponent has to activate a monster effect during the main phase, your opponent has activated a monster effect during your turn, then you can say a normal spell or a normal trap from your deck. However, if your opponent controls a monster, you can add it to your hand instead. But if you set a card, then that set card cannot be activated that turn. So if you use this, you set a Branded Fusion, you have to wait till your next turn to use Branded Fusion. So usually, if you're setting a card, you'll want to use this to set a normal trap, which I'm pretty sure this card is why a Dimensional Barrier got banned. Next, I play 3 copies of Duality. This card is the reason why I was saying it's kind of important to have light spellcasters, which I will probably take this out if I take out the Dogmatica stuff too, which I think the Dogmatica is like 12 cards in total. But Duality just lets you tribute a light or dark monster then special summon a light or dark monster with the opposite type you tributed. So if you tribute a light, you summon a dark, or vice versa. But you summon a monster that has the same level and type, but the opposite attribute as that tributed monster, which in this case, well, I believe it's obvious what it would be for a level 8 dark spellcaster monster from the extra deck. But rather than just assume, I will just get to what it is once I actually get to that. But it does also have a graveyard effect, which I do like, which is you can banish it to then target a light and dark monster that are banished, return them to the deck, then you can draw a card. And you can only use each effect. You can only activate each effect Duality once per turn. And lastly, for the spells, I play 3 copies of Branded Opening. Branded Opening has the effect where you can discard a card, and if you do, you can then special summon a Despia monster. You take a Despia monster from deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it in defense mode. I believe it has to be in defense. Yep. And then the only other downside of this is that it does lock you into fusion monsters. But it does have the graveyard effect that most people do forget about, which is if your fusion monster be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard to negate, or you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So if your opponent activates Raigeki, then you can banish this from your graveyard, so all your fusion monsters are safe. Your non-fusion monsters won't be so lucky, but meh. Then for the trap cards, I play the 1 copy of Fusion or Duplication as a set target for Thrust. This just lets you target a Fusion or Polymerization normal or quick play spell. It's in your either graveyard. Banish that spell card, then apply that spell's effects when activated. And you can only activate 1 Fusion Duplication per turn, which I just like this in copy Branded Fusion or Super Polymerization. Just by banishing one from your graveyard, or it's the mirror match, you can banish your opponents. Next, I play 1 copy of Branded Retribution. Branded Retribution is something you do not want to actually activate. Which, what you want mostly for is the graveyard effect of being able to banish this card from your graveyard, target a branded spell or trap in your graveyard, except for another Retribution, add it to your hand. But its effect when activated is when a spell or trap or monster effect is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster, return to the extra deck 1 face-up fusion monster you control or 2 fusion monsters in your graveyard that mention Fallen of Alabaz as material. And if you do, negate the activation, and if you do that, destroy that card. Which, it's not the worst thing to have, it's just not going to be the easiest thing to actually pull off. Unless you have this and you're able to use Maximus's effect. Next, for the traps, I play 3 copies of the Black Goat Laughs. The Black Goat Laughs has 2 effects. You can only use 1 of the 2 effects per turn, just like Tragedy and Alibur, where you can declare a card name. This turn, neither player can special summon monsters with that original name, except from the graveyard. And then you can banish this card from your graveyard, declare a monster card name, and then this turn, neither player can activate that monster's effects that turn. I just like that. I've been trying to get this card for so long, and it took it being put in a $20 structure deck for me to actually get 1. Which meant 16 to get 3. But next, and lastly for the traps, I play 3 copies of Branded Banishment. Branded Banishment is basically Monster Reborn and Super Polymerization in 1 card. As has the effect when you target a Despia or level 8 or higher fusion monster in your graveyard, special summon it, then you can apply the following effect, which lets you banish from either side of the field to fusion summon. Which you can just use the revival effect and you don't have to fusion summon at all, which is one thing I like about this. And then that's it for the main deck. The biggest thing I might change is take out the 12 dogmatica cards, which I do include duality as a dogmatica card, for either Despia cards or toss in, what was it? I think it's like 10 cards for Bestial. I don't remember at this point, but moving on to the extra deck. I play one copy of Garura, Wings of Resonant Life. This card is usually what you'll send off of Nadir Servant or Maximus. Just depends on which one you get to first. But Garura has the effect that if it's sent to the graveyard, then you get to draw one card. You can use that effect of Garura once per turn. But it has 1500 attack, so you can actually activate Nadir Servant, send Garura to add Maximus or Ecclesia, and then Garura will let you draw one more card. So it's just what Dogmatica can do that essentially tries to do what Sky Striker does, which is add a Sky Striker card and then draw a card. Next, I play two copies of Albion the Branded Dragon. Albion the Branded Dragon has the effect that when it's summoned, you can banish monsters from your hand, field, or graveyard to fusion summon a level 8 or higher fusion monster. And then, if this card during the end phase, if this card's in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, then you can add to your hand or set a branded spell or trap card. And you can only use each effect of Albion the Branded Dragon once per turn. Then next, I play one copy of Titaniclad, the Ash Dragon. Titaniclad's mostly in here as just a card to be dumped, because it has the graveyard effect of during the end phase, the card's in the graveyard because it was sent there that turn, you can add to your hand or special summon a Fawn of Albaz or a Dogmatica monster from your deck. But if you actually summon it, then it does require a monster with 2500 or more attack, plus Fawn of Albaz, but it gains attack. Let's see, what was it? Gains attack equal to the combined original levels of the monsters used for its summoning times 100. So right off the back, it's automatically going to be at least an additional 400 because Fawn of Albaz is level 4. And then I believe its other effect is after this card's fusion summon for the rest of this turn, your effects. I don't remember what the rest of its effect is. Okay, it's unaffected by the activated effects of any other monster, especially on the extra deck. So really, this is only in here. You only summon this if you need something to get really big. But usually you're sending it so you can special summon a Maximus, a Fleur-de-Lis, an Ecclesia. Or you can send this, and then this will be able to summon your Guiding Quem, which can then set up a Mirror Jade for the next turn. Next, I play one copy of Rinbrum the Striking Dragon. Rinbrum has the effect that when this card, or when a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster's effect is activated as a quick effect, then you can negate that effect. Then you can return one monster from the field to the hand. So I do like that it's a negate and then a compulse. And then it also has the graveyard effect, which is... during your opponent's turn, as a quick effect, during your opponent's turn, while this card's in your graveyard, quick effect, you can target a Fawn of Albaz monster that's a Fawn of Albaz that's in your graveyard, special summon either that monster or this card, and then banish the other. Which usually I'll summon back Rinbrum because I do like it's just negate and then bounce. And then you can just recycle the Fawn of Albaz later. Next, I play one copy of Granguinol the Dusk Dragon. Granguinol the Dusk Dragon has the effect that if this card's fusion summoned, you can send a level 6 or higher light or dark monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. If a monster is special summoned by an opponent's activated monster effect, except in the damage step, then you can banish this card from your field or graveyard, special summon a Dogmatica monster from your deck or a Despia monster from your extra deck. You can only use each effect of Granguinol the Dusk Dragon once per turn. Which usually what you'll send with this is, let's see, I believe the usual send is, what was its name? Let's see. Okay, usual send is Albion the Shrouded Dragon. Because that's how it works. This will dump Albion, and then something else will dump the trap. You can then have Albion send the Branded Fusion from deck. The trap returns Branded Fusion to hand. That's how it works. I don't remember. But this also is a level 8 light spellcaster you can use with the Duality. Then I play one copy of Despian Proskinian. Proskinian I found to be hilarious against Yummy. Just because they can try to destroy it with a card effect, but if you have Branded Opening, then they'll have to use 2 effects, which, from what I've seen with Yummy, is rare. But also the fact that Yummy just can't really do anything about Queritus, as Queritus has the main phase quick effect to just reduce everything to 0, which actually overrides the field spell's effect to increase their attack because it's applied first and then Queritus will be applied second. Which Queritus has the effect that it reduces all monsters on the field, the attack of all monsters on the field to 0, except for level 8 or higher fusion monsters. And then if Queritus leaves the field because of an opponent's card, then you can special summon a Dogmatica or a Despia monster. No, you summon a Fallen Valbaz or a Despia monster from your deck. Then you only use each effect of Despia and Queritus once per turn. Next, I play one copy of Alba Lunatus, the Abyss Dragon. Alba Lunatus has the effect that it has to either be fusion summoned by using, it can't be used as fusion material, must either be fusion summoned or special summoned by sending the above cards on the field to the graveyard. Which I still think that's hilarious that they made it a contact fusion. And then it can attack monsters your opponent controls during each battle phase up to the number of monsters used to summon it. So if you use 4 dragons on the field to make it, then it gets 4 attacks on monsters during each turn. And then it has the effect of during the end phase, so this card's in the graveyard because it was sent there that turn, then you can add to your hand or set a branded or polymerization normal spell. No, you add a polymerization normal spell or a fusion normal spell from your deck. That's what it was. And then next I play one copy of Lubellion the Searing Dragon. The Searing Dragon does the exact same thing as Albion the Shrouded Dragon. Or Albion the Branded Dragon, I mean. Shrouded is the main deck, Branded is the extra deck. But rather than banishing from hand, field, or graveyard to fusion summon, it discards a card for cost to then be able to recycle from field, grave, or banish. Which, speaking of the for cost part, one thing I forgot to mention is with branded opening, I forgot the name for some reason. Branded opening's effect, if it gets ashed, you do not discard for it. I just now realized I forgot to mention that. Because discarding is not cost, so if it gets ashed, you just don't discard. And then the only other downside of Lubellion is that if you use that effect, it can't attack, but that's fine because normally it's shuffling itself, and if one of Albaz's back, to summon Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. And then next, I play one card which I think is absolutely hilarious in this deck, which is one copy of Secretarian Dragon. Secretarian Dragon is a floodgate monster in the way that while it's on the field, your opponent cannot activate the effects of dragon and spellcaster monsters they control. It loses 100 attack for each of your banished cards, and then once per turn, you can target a dragon and a spellcaster in your graveyard, summon one, and put the other at the bottom of the deck. Whereas I believe it's at the bottom of the deck. It could just be shuffled back into the deck. Okay, no, you place the other at the bottom of the deck. But I mainly like using this in the mirror match, and considering the deck is half dragons, half spellcasters, it kind of makes sense to use this. Next, I play one copy of Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon. Mirror Jade has the effect that you can only control one Mirror Jade at a time. And then you can only use its effect, or you only use the effect of it once per copy every other turn. I say once per copy because if you use it and then bring it back later into the turn, then you can actually attempt to do it again. But it does make me. I do think it's fair though that its effect is a once every other turn, because you send a fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that lets Fallen of Albaz as material, to then non-target banish a monster on the field. And then if Mirror Jade leaves the field because of an opponent's card, then you can activate its effect so that at the end of the turn, all monsters your opponent control are destroyed. And then the target for the duality in this deck is the one copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, which is a level 8 Dark Spellcaster fusion monster. Which, with this deck, if you summon it, it doesn't have its burn effect, which is for every normal monster used to make it, you can target one monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and then your opponent takes damage equal to that monster's original attack. But what it does have is the rest of its effects, where it cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. And then, if your opponent activates a card or effect, you can discard a card to negate that effect. And then if you destroyed that card, you negate the effect and destroy that card. Then if you destroy the card, then Dragoon gains 1,000 attack. Which does make me laugh. I've actually won games with this card by activating my own card, negating it with Dragoon, just to give it 1,000 extra attack points and then swing for game. Depending on when you use Dragoon's effect, Dragoon can just win games by itself, which I still think is dumb. And then next I play one copy of the Dragon That Devours the Dogma, as I think that's what it's called. I always think, okay, it is Dragon That Devours the Dogma. But it has the effect that when an Ecclesia monster is on the field or in either graveyard, it gains 500 attack. Also, it's unaffected by other cards' effects. You can use each of the following effects of the Dragon That Devours the Dogma once per turn. But this card is the reason why I'm actually trying the Dogmatica version in the first place. It has the effect that, once per turn, if this card is special summon, you can shuffle up to 2 cards from the graveyard and or banish it back into the deck. Then during the end phase, this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn. You can add 1 Dogmatica or Tri-Brigade monster, or Dogmatica or Tri-Brigade card from your deck to your hand. I might try bumping this to 2, but for now I'm trying it at 1. Then next, I'm also trying one copy of Light and Darkness Dragonlord. Light and Darkness Dragonlord is just in here because it requires a level 8 Light Dragon and a level 8 Dark Dragon. But essentially it is a 3 Omni Negates, as the first 3 cards that are played, or every time a card or effect is activated, except for itself, it'll lose 1,000 attack points permanently to then negate that card and destroy it. So it has 3,400 attack points, so it can use that effect 3 times. Well, it can resolve that effect 3 times, I should say. And then it has the. And then after that, if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target a dragon monster from your graveyard, special summon it. And then the only other downside is it does have to be fusion summoned, so it can't just die and then bring itself back, but which is understandable. Just having an infinite negate thing would be kind of broken. And then lastly, I'm playing one copy of Despian Lulu Willilith. Despian Lulu Willilith has the effect that if this once per turn, if a card or cards leaves the extra deck, except in a damage step, you can make all monsters you currently control gain 500 attack permanently. Then you can negate the effects of one face-up monster card in the field. And you negate that card's effect until the end of the turn. And then during the end phase, this card's in the graveyard because it was sent there that turn. Then you can special summon a light spellcaster monster from your hand or deck whose attack equals its defense. You can use each effect of Despian Lulu Willilith once per turn. And that is it for my current 60-card branded Dogmatica Despia deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, any ideas for decks like to be made in the future, or decks like to see face each other, feel free to comment down below. I always read your comments. Thank you for watching.